What's going on? Okay. One thing I love about Husserl is his book, The Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness. That writing, pretty much, that just kind of caused me to blow a fuse because I liked it so much. There was something about it that was just really neat to read, and I recommend that if you like anything philosophical, then this is definitely awesome to read. Now, I only own a portion of it, and it's a part of a anthology, but and what I'm about to discuss in it is not the only part of it that's important. But I do want to discuss some main things about it, just because this is pretty neat, I think. So first of all, okay, in this book he talks about time consciousness. Okay, consciousness of temporal objects. Temporal objects being things like a melody, tones, or things that succeed through time. Now, for one thing, if I'm hearing music, I'm hearing first a primal, or let's say I hear one note, and that is a primal impression. That Husserl calls this a primal impression, or this is of originary presentation, which then after that, primary impression is what the thing is first, as it appears to us in our consciousness. Furthermore, you have a retention, which is not exactly it's merely an extension of the primary impression. It's that primary impression that is still there. It's just that still there. It's merely an extension of it. And then furthermore, you have furthermore you have recollection, which is they call retention, or he calls retentions primary remembrance, and he calls recollection secondary remembrance, because mostly recollection you have to go back into your mind, and you have to go back and you have to get it back from where it was. Retentions are just extensions of primary impressions. So I'm going to read you something here that is part of this. Constantly flowing, the impressional consciousness passes over into an ever-fresh retentional consciousness, going along the flux or with it. We have a continuous series of retentions pertaining to the beginning point. So he's talking about the consciousness, and how it's conscious of time, and that constantly flowing, the impressional consciousness passes into an ever fresh retentional consciousness. So as you get a primary impression, then that's going to pass over into it's going to keep going from retentional consciousness as primary impressions continue to enter or occur. So I just want to discuss a few things here. Now here's something that he says about retention. Now in this 12th section of this part of it, it's called retention as proper intentionality. Retentional consciousness includes real consciousness of the past of sound, primary remembrance of sound, which is retentions, and is not to be resolved into sensed sound and apprehension as memory. So retention, in a way, retention is intentionality of primary impression. So it's mostly retention is just merely an extension of what happened in the primary impression, in the sense that it's proper intentionality. Now, continuing on further, because I want to get to something that's really neat, I think, here. Reproduction temporary. Now, everything thus resembles perception and primary remembrance, and yet is not itself perception and primary remembrance. Now, here he's talking about reproduction of them in secondary remembrance. I want to continue here to something that I thought was really cool in here. But mostly, I just wanted to read a few things off there that were important, I thought. But one thing that he discussed was a continuum. A continuum being when you have a primary impression that has its own continuum as that fades away into retention. Each retention of the primary impression has its own continuum, where that retention fades into a secondary remembrance, and then that comes in that has its own continuum, and then that each remembrance further beyond that impression has its own continuum, which is, I think it's pretty neat, because it just shows how things after you hear them, or whatever, how they fade into your memory, and how an ever fresh consciousness comes in. And I thought that was neat.